Good, good morning. It's Cindy from the Osterville Library, and we are very happy today to have with us David Bogan, our town councilor from Precinct 5 in Osterville. So first, David, welcome on this beautiful fall day.
Thank you, Cindy. As always, it's great to see you. I'm sorry it's been so long since we had occasion to do this.
Oh, that's okay, but we've been getting a lot of questions about all the piles of dirt over by the Bay School. So can you fill us in on what they might be doing over there?
Sure. As most people know, there have been plans, oh God, going back almost 20 years for the building and the field and the tennis courts. The tennis courts we know were done a couple of years ago. That left the issue of what are we going to do about the building and what are we going to do about the fields. We finally made the decision to move forward with the fields. I'll come back to the building in a moment. And it was one of those things where uh, one moment there was nothing, and the next moment it was like, oh my God, what's going on over there? And even I, who generally knew what was going on, as you know, I walk around a lot with my dog, and I was walking on Weano one day and I saw this huge mound of dirt. And I said, I've got to go over and see what's going on because I didn't expect this level of construction. And it looks like a major commercial construction site. Um, so that is finally moving forward with a vengeance on the fields. There will be a new field, there's new sod, there is a 30-foot backstop, there will be small bleacher areas. And so that is what people are seeing right now.
What is it going to be, like a baseball field and anything else, or?
At the moment, it is largely just the softball field. I don't know if the current iteration has a plan for a walking trail around it or not, but it certainly is the fields. And in fact, I probably should have given it to you. When we had the Osterville Village Association meeting on Tuesday, I did pass around to members of the board the schematics so that you could see where the field fits in relative to the current building, et cetera. Frankly, it's a little bit hard to understand. You can make out the field, but unless you're an engineer, it looks like hieroglyphics or something like that.
Are they going to have the outside basketball still?
I don't recall if that's on there, and I don't recall that there was any proposed revision. Part of my hesitation is because the building does intrude a little bit on the plan for the field. So I don't know if something else, such as the basketball courts, had to be moved or addressed in order to accommodate the field. But there certainly will be an area for the playground long term. And that's the next phase. The next phase, they wanted to get the initial construction of the field, the sod, et cetera, down this fall. We had a meeting the end of August with John Crow from the Village Association, Peter Hansen, Patty Michaud from the Community Development Program, Mark Milne on Finance, Mark Elves, the Town Manager, and Dan Santos, DPW, because we had to kind of say, okay, folks, we've been kind of planning this building and this kind of compound for the last 20 years. Let's talk realistically about whether or not we think this building is going to happen. And I think we all agreed that given some of the other issues, financial, that the town is confronting, such as the comprehensive wastewater management plan that we can talk a little bit about later, that it was just not realistic to think that we were going to move forward with the building, at least as originally contemplated. So the next phase is we are scheduled to meet again, I think the end of this month, to talk about a scaled down version of the building. That is, it's not getting a lot of use. I think my recollection is that it's used by about 7 people during the year, or 7 groups during the year, but not with any measure of regularity. It's not real pleasant inside. So if I had to guess, it's that the building is probably going to get torn down, and then there will be perhaps restroom facilities and maybe some sort of smaller structure that could accommodate people if it's, raining, for example, and you're there for a softball game. But again, that portion has not been worked out. Phase 3 would be the playground. There currently is a plan for the playground, and we're talking about, are there ways to maybe shift around some funds, because there are some funds that are still left over from either, I can't recall if it was the tennis court development or if it was for the field revitalization, that we could allocate or move over towards playground equipment. We just equipped 2 playgrounds in Centerville, and they were approved, I want to say in August. It's not inexpensive. I want to say that one or both of those were around $800,000 for new equipment. But there are a lot of people, even those who don't have young children at this point, who think that you need good playground equipment. And in fact, at the Village Association meeting on Tuesday, Barbara Thomas, who was a member of the public who was there, was saying, you know, you need to make sure that you've got good playground equipment and restroom facilities. So that's what we'll be moving on to next. But you're finally starting to see the field start to take shape over there. And so that's what people are seeing. And I know you've gotten questions and I've gotten questions. And I just confirmed that is what we're doing over there, right? Because it looks a lot bigger than I expected. And it got the confirmation that, yeah, that's what you're seeing.
Well, that's good. That's great to hear. And nice to know there may be some other bathrooms other than ours in the village.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. So the next thing, which is very near and dear to my heart that I'm so excited about, is this talk about sidewalks on East Bay Road. Could you fill us in more on that?
Yeah, you know, I would say I've had the good fortune of serving in this capacity for 2 years now. And that is the issue about which I hear the most. I could be walking my dog. I could have people sending me emails. They say, we need sidewalks here. In fact, I was walking with one of my daughters who came down from New Hampshire with her baby a couple months ago, and there was a couple walking on the side of the street on East Bay, going towards the boat launch. And the gentleman on the other side said, "Are you the town councilor?" And I said, "It depends. Why are you asking?" And he said, "Well, we need sidewalks here." And I said, "Okay, yes, I'm the town councilor, and you're not the first one to tell me. And I'm a firm advocate for sidewalks here, as someone who, as you know, walks down that road all the time. We get a lot of bike traffic. We get a lot of walking traffic. We get a lot of jogging traffic, and it simply is not safe." So I said, we are currently working on a plan to put sidewalks in place. The good news is I actually have schematics that have been drawn up by the DPW that would take the sidewalk down from Main Street, down East Bay, along past the boat launch to Douses. And actually, I think this might have been Gail Crocker who said, well, you know, if you're going to do that, why don't you think about also extending it down to Weano, and then going left on Weano down towards Seaview. And so when we had the meeting to which I referred earlier, we talked about that as well. So my understanding is that Dan Santos, director of DPW, and his crew are currently taking a look at that, and they're going to come back when we meet again later this month to see the drawings of that, and then talk with Mark Milne about how we would finance that. Once we have that, we would then have to, you know, roll it out to the public, and hopefully it will be received favorably. You know, like I said, I hear a lot of favorable comments about it, but I am told that it was attempted one time before, and it met with some opposition. I'm not going to speculate as to who that was, whether it was the butters, folks who used the boat launch, who feared that they lose their ability to park because there is already limited parking that's down there when you're using the boat launch. So for the moment, I'm just going to remain optimistic that we can get this done, because the last thing we want is to have this drag on and have someone get hurt. Because
I think that's a great idea. And every time I walk down there, I think, you know, geez, how could it be done and stuff? And hopefully they won't have to put those granite things in every place. Because I was thinking by the boat launch, just have it be the, you know, you walk by the side of the cars and not have the granite there. They, you know, have the shell pathway that's kind of there now.
Yep.
They're only there a couple months out of the year.
Agreed. So. And my understanding, and I confirmed it when we had the meeting, is that the town does have, I forgot how much of an easement on each side of the road, such that there would be space. There are a couple of areas that as I walk down, I look and I go, geez, there's not a lot of space there, but I leave that to people who are smarter than me to figure out how they're going to implement that.
Yeah. Well, that's great news. I hope that goes forward.
Yeah, let's keep our fingers crossed on that one.
Yeah, maybe by 2030, huh?
Yeah. Indeed.
Wastewater management is a big issue in the village and things are starting, in the town actually, and things are starting to happen there. So can you fill us in on that?
Sure. The good news is folks have been hearing about this for the last few years. It is finally a reality. There was a groundbreaking, I want to say 2 weeks ago, right around September 17th, on the first phase of the sewer expansion. It's in the Strawberry Hill Road section of Centerville. I know the number of my fellow councilors were there. And in fact, a couple of them have already been contacted because they are scheduled to be connected. So as folks probably know, it's a 30-year plan in 3 phases. Originally, much of Osterville was not scheduled to be sewered. However, it was determined that in order to reach what I think it was DEP required for the total maximum daily load, that DPW had to go back and expand the area that would be sewered, and that encompassed a larger portion of Osterville. So folks can go on the town's website. There is, right on the homepage, I know there's a link to Barnstable Clean Water Resources, and that has a lot of FAQs, frequently asked questions. And if it's not addressed there, you can go to the DPW link itself, where there is additional information. And if all else fails, folks should feel free to call DPW and they'll be more than happy to answer the questions. The other things that folks obviously ask is, well, what does this mean to me if I am getting sewered? Again, those are all addressed in the frequently asked questions on the website. Generally speaking, no pun intended, there is a general assessment that everyone will pay. There's a specific assessment that you pay if you are going to be sewered. That general assessment was voted on by the council at $10,000 for that connection. There may be incremental costs for certain properties. For example, if your property, if your connection is, you have a long driveway. I had someone say to me, I've got a really long driveway. Well, then your overall cost to connect may be a little bit more than it is for everyone else. The other thing that I will mention is some people will ask, well, 2 parts. What if I don't want to connect right now? Do I have to? The answer is yes. Because the only way the numbers work is based upon the assumptions that were made, and that means you have to connect. Does that mean you have to pay it all at once? No. The town does have a financing vehicle. Subject to check. My recollection is that you can pay quarterly and you can finance it for as long as 30 years. The other thing that some folks want to know about it is, well, wait a minute, I just put in a new Title V system. How does that work? Again, DPW will work with those folks to try to find something that balances between the fact that they just put this in and the fact that the calculations were predicated on the assumption that everybody's going to be put on the system. The other question that folks will ask is, well, what happens if I'm not scheduled till phase 2 and I've got a Title V system and it fails during phase 1? I don't want to put in a new Title V system and then have to connect to the sewer. Again, my understanding is DPW is working to address the concerns of those folks so as to not create a hardship. The final piece, and this is something that I raised, which is, look, we call it a comprehensive wastewater management plan, but what do we do about folks who aren't getting sewered? They are paying into the sewer system by way of the general assessment. But what happens to them if their Title V system fails? That is an issue that we have not come to resolution on, but will be addressed, because I think a matter of equity requires that we look at those folks as well. And then the final piece is, Zeke Rocker and the Barnstable Clean Water Coalition has been taking a look at a number of what they call innovative alternative systems. And I think that if we're going to call this a comprehensive wastewater management plan, that has to be part of our plan. Those are showing good data thus far. Basically, in layman's terms, because that's the only way that I can understand it, those are systems that get kind of attached to your existing Title V system, but have the ability to substantially reduce the level of nitrogen, such that you get results that hopefully are comparable, if not very beneficial, when compared to a property that would be sewered. So there's a lot that's happening, but there's still a lot that needs to happen as well.
Well, it looks like they've put a lot of information for people to find if they have any questions, and
Yes.
it's a thoughtful process.
Yep. And like I said, if anyone has any questions, they should certainly feel free to contact Dan Santos's folks at the DPW, and I'm sure they'd be happy to answer.
Well, great. So the last thing I want to talk about is the comprehensive plan that's coming up, your strategic plan. It's now time for that. So what's happening
Yes.
next?
The town is required, as are all towns, to undertake a local comprehensive plan review every 10 years. And we are at that 10-year mark. So we are in phase one, which is the community visioning process. And the first step of that initiative was the selection of a consultant to work with the town. Elizabeth Jenkins of the Planning and Development Department reported last night on the selection of that consultant, Barrett Planning Group. I did serve on the 5-member task force assigned to review the responses that the town got to the RFP. I think it was, from my perspective, a good collection of those who responded. We should feel very good about that. And so now we're off and running. The next phase will be the selection of a local comprehensive plan committee to work with the consultant to get an idea from the town members and residents' perspective, what they would like to see over the next 10 years. So there will be substantial outreach to, say, the Osterville Village Association and the other village associations, as well as other key stakeholders who will be selected to be part of that local comprehensive plan committee to work with the consultant as we go through the community visioning process. The next phase after that will be to identify, and part of when we talk about a local comprehensive plan, it's exactly what you said. What do we want the town of Barnstable to look like over the next 10 years? And as you might imagine, that's a little bit of a challenge because we in Osterville or Marston's Mill or Katuitt or Centerville may have an idea of what we want the town to look like in 10 years and what we need to do to get there. But it has to fit in within the whole of the town of Barnstable. So it's not always easy because, I said to someone earlier today during a meeting, many of us in Osterville, it's like there used to be an old adage for Austin, Texas, keep Austin weird, and we would say keep Osterville the way it is. We like it the way it is. But we do have to recognize that Osterville in 2021 is not the way Osterville was in 1965. And so we have to look at it and say, okay, what changes do we think need to be made in order to make sure that we are staying true to what people require today? And that could be things such as connectivity, so that we know a lot more people work remotely, they work from home, they need technological assets. What does our housing stock look like? We know that the biggest issue we have on the Cape, the two biggest issues, water and the cleanliness of our water, and housing. And our housing situation is not getting any better. How do we address that, but at the same time maintain the character of the village of Osterville that we all love so much? So that's where we are. And like I said, we've started in earnest with the selection of the consultant, and now we'll actually start towards the fact-finding process so that we can establish a vision and a plan for how we go forward over the next 10 years.
Oh, sounds like you got a full plate. Is there anything else you'd like people to know?
No, I think that generally covers it. The only other thing that I would say, as you know, before the world, as I say, went sideways, I was having office hours so that folks could come in to express their concerns or just to meet me. And you were gracious enough to allow me to do that at the library. Once COVID happened, we stopped doing that. I know I mentioned at the Osterville Business and Professional Association meeting back in July, which was probably the first gathering of that type that we had in a year and a half, that the plan was to go back to renewing those. But then we had the increase in the Delta variant. And so we've not done that. So what I would tell folks is if you do want to contact me for any reason, and some do, just feel free to contact me by phone or email. Some people do it. Probably had 2 or 3 people do it this week. I try to address those issues immediately, because I find that if I don't, I have a tendency to forget about them. So folks should not hesitate to reach out to me, and don't think that just because we're not having office hours, I'm inaccessible. I'm still accessible to the extent.
Well, you could
that
have
that's
dog
needed.
walking hours with you in Bistro.
I would gladly do that, except, my dog is
Yeah,
kind of like,
well, it's one way to
I-
keep the meeting short.
yeah, exactly. I tell people he's a lot cuter than he is friendly. He's fine with me. He's actually laying on the floor right next to me now, but with anybody else, I never know how he's going to be.
Yeah, I know. Well, I thank you so much for your time today and for all the insights that are going on in the village. And we hope we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Cindy. It's always a pleasure. I look forward to seeing you and talking with you again. Bye-bye.
Bye.